Vince McMahon wins the Royal Rumble. 56 minutes, 38 seconds. It's never specified on this show how long it will be in between people joining in. And there doesn't seem to be a set time.
Well, Conrad, I ran a stopwatch and I timed every single interval.
And
yeah, there was no specified time.
It's amazing.
I think every one of them were pretty much different. Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like it's 90 seconds. Sometimes it's clearly not.
So sometimes it's a minute and 11 seconds.
It's crazy.
Sometimes it's 2.5 minutes. Hey, but who's counting?
We start with McMahon and Austin, and McMahon is coated up in the baby oil here. Chat me up here. Is this Vince McMahon's like fantasy? I mean, this has to be something that, even though he tries to downplay it and not get overly excited or acknowledge it for anybody, the way he's carrying on here, he's having fun.
Oh, hell yeah, he's having fun. Come on, this is what Vince dreamed of since he was a kid.
Sure.
He always wanted to be a performer. Vince always wanted to be Dr. Jerry Graham. He always wanted to be in the spotlight. He wanted to be that nasty heel that everyone despised. So hell yeah, he was loving it. He's a performer. He loved getting out there and doing that shit.
I got to tell you, it was fun to go back and watch this because the crowd is just so into this, and Austin's wearing him out, gets him into the corner, stomps for what feels like forever, flips him off, one final kick. As Michael Cole would say, vintage Austin. I just loved it. Their interaction at the beginning was unbelievable. I loved it. McMahon gets one low kick in, and, Meltzer wrote, McMahon came out with the oil and tan in a bottle that bodybuilders use coming on stage, walking around like a contestant bodybuilder with the famous pro wrestling Mil Mascaras walk. And, yeah, Golga comes in next because I know when I think about Austin and McMahon, Golga's who I want next.
Damn right.
To my surprise, the crowd's so hot that Golga is actually getting over. Like the crowd is really with their little oddities, hand movements, you know, the old Public Enemy, put your hands in the air gimmick. Austin and McMahon wind up brawling to a women's bathroom. And when they do, it's revealed that this was all a trap. McMahon had lured him in, and the corporation is going to destroy Austin and leave him laying. Droz comes in next with face paint. Not a look we saw very often. Edge is out next. And then Gilbert comes in, and Gilbert is getting the full Goldberg-like treatment. Huge reaction from the crowd. Steve Blackman's out next. So let's run through that. We start with Austin McMahon. Then we run through all these guys. Dan Severn, Tiger Ali Singh. And to my surprise, Blue Meanie comes out, gets a hell of a pop. Once he scoots in the ring, does his meanie dance, the crowd responds. It's really weird because I don't even remember Blue Meanie being in a Royal Rumble, much less his dance getting over like that. This crowd was so into this match, and it's names that you wouldn't normally expect there to be a big pop for, but they're here. It's fun to go back and look at times when the Job Squad and the oddities were really, really over. At this point in the match, though, it doesn't feel like we've got a contender for somebody who might actually win the thing. Who would have helped lay out this Royal Rumble as far as entrance of, you know, the order of the entrance and all that?
I think Pat and I laid it out for the most part.
What's the story?
We had the idea behind it was start with, and this was my bitch. What I didn't like about it. And actually Terry Taylor, worked with us on it as well. But here's what I hated about it. Vince and Austin start, two biggest names. Vince, first time, you know, being in the ring type thing, actually in a match. Austin, the hottest fucking guy in the territory. And they're gone 5 minutes into the match. And yes, we had little bits with them where you saw them back and forth, but, you didn't have any Austin, you didn't have any Vince in the match. And I think that was a big lure for people to see them interact with other guys in the Royal Rumble. So that part, we had our hands tied. These are the spots we have to get in. This is how we're going to do it. So we had to figure it out. We had to figure it out. And when you look at everybody in totality of guys that are entered in the Royal Rumble, it was an Austin McMahon Royal Rumble. You had a few other names in it, but it was tough. I mean, it was just, it's not as easy as everybody thinks. You got to figure out spots for 30 different guys and know what the hell's going on at all times. And it's writing a 60-minute match that you literally have to write, because one spot goes into another guy's entrance and this exit goes into something else. So it was difficult. We had our hands tied with the Austin McMahon interaction, or lack thereof.
It is pretty exciting when I saw Tiger Ali Singh come in.
Well, he came in, his was only a minute 30 interval. The average interval was about a minute 35. If you're interested.
The lights go out eventually when it's just Jesse James and Mabel. Undertaker comes out. The Acolytes and Midian hit the ring and they decide to attack Mabel and they drag him away. Kurgan shows up. Gangrel's here.
Well, and that was the longest interval.
Shut the fuck up.
Oh, seriously, it was. It was 2.5 minutes from the time that Road Dogg came out and we had a blackout. It was 2.5 minutes until Gangrel came out. That we did the whole thing with Taker, and we didn't send anybody out for 2.5 minutes. Felt like an eternity.
Well, but you knew the good wrestling was coming because Kurgan was out next.
Yeah.
Meltzer would write, Kurgan showed up and the next 90 seconds were worse than the previous 35. Al Snow was next in, Goldust, then Godfather. By the way, big pop for Godfather, and the crowd's even, chanting, "We want hose," which is kind of fun. Instead of hose though, they got the mayor. Kane's out. The orderlies show up and Kane gives one a choke slam. He jumps over the top rope, eliminating himself, and the crowd's sort of down on that. And then Vince McMahon shows back up wearing a sweatshirt and he's going to do commentary for like the next half hour.
Yeah, no shit. But before that, we gave Kane had the diesel spot. And that was the spot of going in and clearing house and standing in the ring alone. And that's actually what we call it. We would always have the diesel spot because we did it kind of as a way to spotlight Diesel in his first Royal Rumble. And then each year we'd go, okay, who's going to get the diesel spot, and come up with some way for some guy to come out and clear the ring. And it was Kane's turn this time. And then the orderlies coming out and him eliminating himself. But then it was, you're sitting there looking at it going, man, we got no Vince. We got no Austin. We got to do something. And then the idea was we'll put Vince on commentary. And so he's back out there and you're getting Vince, but he's not in the ring. So yeah, it was a lot of caveats.
We've got an ambulance that's going to come back at this point, this time with Austin driving it. I guess I should remind everybody that when he was left for dead earlier in the women's bathroom, that's a real sentence. They carted him out, not through the back, but through the front of the building to where they're going outside, but there's fans everywhere and Austin's on a stretcher. It was a surreal scene. I don't remember seeing anything like that before. It wasn't like a loading dock. It was just out the door. But here the ambulance comes back and Austin runs in, goes after McMahon, but he's attacked by Shamrock. Boss Man comes in. Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Val Venus are in next. Then X-Pac and Mark Henry. Then Jeff Jarrett. The crowd, of course, dies when Deborah goes to the back. That's who got Jared to pop. D'Lo's in next. And this time he's got Jacqueline and Terry Runnels, which I don't really get because he just calls her to have a miscarriage. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have your second longest interval in between entrance. And after D'Lo is out there, now you got 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
Listen, who am I talking to?
What?
What's going on, you fucking nerd? You're over here with a goddamn stopwatch time and entrances.
I did.
You used to make, whenever we would have a recap of one of these shows and Meltzer would make mention of it, you just flew off the handle making fun of him. And now I guess you figured out how to use your fancy stopwatch app on your phone. And
there's this thing called the lap. And I saved every one of them. You can go back and you could look at the different intervals all the way through.
Jesus.
But no, here's the thing. Running Gorilla, and a lot of times I would get so mad because I just wanted to run the 2 minute clock. It's easier that way. But we had so many things that had to happen before the next guy could come out. And then I would always go back to the very first Royal Rumble and Dick Ebersol and Titan Time. So it was just for shits and giggles. I was like, man, I remember this, and I remembered just everybody was different and everything was different. And it was one of the very first times that I didn't just run a 2 minute or 90-second clock, that I just was waiting for spots and sending guys. And I'd wait for a spot and go 10, 9, and they would put the clock up. Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know what happened to Bruce, but I hope he shows up next week. Owen Hart comes in. Austin throws a water pitcher in McMahon's face at ringside, but McMahon doesn't come into the ring. Eventually, Austin goes after McMahon at ringside, throws him over the barricades into the crowd, and then back into the ringside area. Hard chair shot, gets him in the back of the head. Austin's killing him. Vince hits a low blow. Austin sells it momentarily and then recovers, hits the stunner, forearm off the middle rope. And this brings The Rock to ringside with the world title. He's dressed, of course, and Rock and Austin argue, allow McMahon to dump him from behind. It's an easy win. And Meltzer would say, probably the worst Rumble ever when it came to the wrestling, but at least they constructed some stories to the match. 1.5 stars. Pretty strict criticism or stiff criticism. Worst Rumble ever. It did tell a story, but, not all that great. What say you?
I hated it. I hated it, and I wrote it. It was just tough to do. We had handcuffs on. It did tell a story, and to that, okay, I give it credit. We told some good stories, but the match itself was not good, and we didn't get to do as much gaga and good shit in the match itself that we normally would have. And that's my biggest critique of it. We told one story. And usually we would tell quite a few and intersperse shit and have little Easter eggs and nuggets in the damn thing. That wasn't the case here. The Undertaker story, a little bit with Mabel, the Kane story, but the rest of it was Austin McMahon, and you only got him for a short period. So that was frustrating to me, but yeah, I don't think it was a good Rumble at all.
25 minutes and 47 seconds is the longest anyone spends in the ring. And that's Steve Austin's total time. Of course, he was in there at the start and the finish, but there was the big chunk in the middle for both him and McMahon where they were out. And Meltzer would say it's the second lowest time for any wrestler. That was the longest in a Royal Rumble. The lowest was 1988 for Bret Hart with 25 minutes and 42 seconds. Normally there's some sort of, Iron Man who makes it the majority of the match, and that didn't happen here.